Thank you so much, Heather, and thank you everyone from the Virgo group for having us here again. How wonderful is that? You get asked for a second time. So my talk today is entitled Confessions of a Dog Food Salesman. And you may ask, why do I need to confess? Is there a priest here? I am going to confess that I'm a hardcore 20-year plus member of the fraternity of dog food salesmen. Pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, and I started my career in 1991 and sold natural pet food. The first time natural pet food became even an entity in the world. And over these years, I've estimated I've sold over 100 million pounds of high quality natural pet foods. But I also have to confess that the industry that I love so much has used misconception and omission at times to market and further our industry. And I want to go over some of those things so that we can help everyone who owns or shares their life with an animal to do a better job nutritionally and not be hoodwinked by the obvious marketing ploys out there. So the first thing I want to discuss is dry food. Dry food has been purported to be the be-all and end-all and a complete diet for any animal. Well, I want you to think about in nature how food works. Food doesn't just appear as a little chunk of something that has all protein, fat, and carbohydrates all mixed into one, bound together. It comes in separate components with moisture. Dry food alone is not the best way to feed an animal. It's a good base if you have a good dry food, but hydration is essential. Anyone who's watching this who feeds their animal dry food only, you need to start hydrating that food because long-term the digestion and the nutrient absorption is going to be far superior. It's also, think about it, if you had to eat dry food only all of your life, how happy would you be? So happiness factor and nutritional factor, we should moisten our dry food. And there's some cool ways to do that we can tell you about after our presentation. The other thing that I want to talk about a little bit is canned food for dogs. Now, canned food for dogs is a great way to get hydration, right? I just told you I don't like dry food. The only problem is that when you're buying canned food from me, I'll estimate that I've sold about 500,000 gallons of water for a very good amount of money over my career as a dog food seller. You can do the water yourself at home. You can create fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, mix them with your dry food, and hydrate it yourself. So buying canned food is great, but it's not the most efficient way for you to spend your money to feed a high-quality diet to your pet. Don't buy the water from me. Use your own water. The other thing that I have to really decry a little bit is the fact that because we're so determined to fill as much space as we can in stores, we've got foods for puppies, mid-puppy, late puppy, early adult, mid-adult, active adult, senior, active senior, white dogs, black and white dogs, sporting dogs, athletic dogs, not so athletic dogs. It's all a bunch of hooey. If you look at what a wolf eats in the wild, it's a carnivore diet from the end of their gestation with mom's milk to the end of their life. So adjusting a diet in these micro manners is for marketing, not for nutrition. Next, reading these labels. My gosh, it's so confusing. It's even confusing for me, and I've been doing it for 20 years. The thing you need to know when you read a pet food label is that the ingredients that you see after about the first 3 or 4, especially up to the fat ingredient, if it says sunflower oil or chicken fat, anything after that is virtually non-existent in the food because it's all based on weight before processing. So if you see a lovely diet and 10 ingredients down, it's got alfalfa sprouts and cottage cheese and apples and carrots and tomatoes, oh my. Those things are so negligible in the final diet because they're starting from wet weight and shrinking down to 10% moisture. They lose about 80%. So you really want to focus on the first 3 or 4 ingredients in the diet to determine what your food's really made of and that you're getting a meat-based food. Let me talk a little bit about supplements. Here we are in the land, in the world of supplements, really. And supplements are great, and our requirements are that we, to call a diet complete in our industry, have to use a laundry list of synthetic supplements, mineral and vitamin. The problem is that if you have a weak diet and it's very high grain or carbohydrate, not a carnivore diet, but an omnivore diet, you're not going to improve it significantly by adding a bunch of synthetic vitamins to it. It's still crappy food with extra vitamins. So I love supplementation, especially if we can start moving towards natural supplements. There's a great article in one of the Virgo publications just this month, and Kim Becker, Heather wrote that, about natural fortification, and she and I exchanged emails last night, and I recommend that you read that. Which magazine is that in, Heather? Food Product Design. Check it out because it's right in line with our thinking. Let's fortify naturally, try to move as many of our supplements to natural sources possible, or use whole food extracts and concentrates. Our industry doesn't allow that. They don't feel as if that covers a complete diet. I disagree with that completely. So you're not going to make up for bad food by supplementing it for better. Next, grain-free, the latest, greatest thing in pet nutrition. We all love grain-free, right? Well, grain-free is a good way to feed a dog or a cat. They're carnivores, so we want to take the grains out of the diet. But it doesn't address the real issue, which is carbohydrate consumption. Carnivores don't eat carbs. Very, very small amount. Naturally, in the wild, a tiger, a wolf, a lion, they're going to get about 5 to 10% of their caloric intake in carbohydrates. The typical commercial pet food is 40 to 70% carbohydrate content. It's way, way off the charts as to how we should be feeding these animals. So if you see a grain-free diet, but it has ingredients like pea flour, tapioca, these are just new ways to put fillers into the diet. There are really good grain-free, high-meat diets, but look for protein percentages above 30, 32%, and read those ingredients and make sure you don't have a lot of new fluff replacing the cereal fluff that used to be in the diets. It's become such a huge marketing thing that everyone now has grain-free diets, and it becomes difficult to now choose. You have to be reading between the lines, not just accepting that grain-free is going to be the answer to all of your problems. The other thing that the industry does is the meat first ingredient trick. Now, why is that a trick? Back to my statement before, weight before processing. Think about this. You've got fresh chicken or fresh beef. Before putting it into a dry food, that's a pound. Let's use that as a reference point. That's going to shrink to about 0.2 of a pound after you dehydrate it and put it into this food. What companies do is they list it first and then they put their cereals under that ingredient. What you need to look for is a dried source of meat protein, or else you don't have a dry food that's meat-based. You have a dry food that's pretending to be meat-based. What you need to look for is ingredients like chicken meal, which is basically concentrated chicken protein, dehydrated meat sources, which are in some of the really good diets that are coming out today. They're very more expensive because you're taking fresh meat and dehydrating it. But that's how you get dry, dense meat protein in a dry food. So again, it's about reading labels, and the more you get used to reading them, you can start to pick up on these cues. So what I would say is that do grain-free if you're doing dry food, but try to make sure you have a meat-based, grain-free, low-carbohydrate diet, a true carnivore diet, not just a fancy-looking package with a food that feeds the same as the stuff of the past. Call it by any name, it's how the product works. And that brings me to how you feed your animal. Our recommendations in our industry are too high. We put on our labels, again, based on regulatory structure, caloric intake per animal's weight, calories per kg, but it doesn't take into account the different qualities of food and the different absorptions that you will get in different foods. What I recommend is that when you look at a feeding chart on a bag of pet food or a can or a frozen loaf, that you go to the lowest feeder recommendation first. Watch your dog or cat, make sure they have good activity level and energy, good coat health, and only increase if they don't seem to be maintaining weight. Obesity is the biggest nutritional problem that we have with our companion animals because we're so abundant in this country with our resources. Natural chemistry. Glycerin is a wonderful thing, perhaps, for exterior use, but it shouldn't be a food ingredient, and a lot of treats use it. I'm not really on board with that. Finally, the attitude that since we can't be perfect, why don't we just do it the way it's always been done? I face this as I built my own company. People don't want to do things differently because they say, we've always been able to make the dry dog food for 10 cents a pound. We've always been able to make a treat for 10 cents a pound. Why do you want to spend $2? The answer is because quality is worth it. So don't accept mediocrity. seek excellence in your food for your animal as you do for yourself. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anthony. We'll be back in 5 minutes with Debbie Wildrek.